Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. News, ops, and a little bit of paranoia. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast.
Yay! Welcome everybody to tonight's episode of the Iron Sysadmin podcast. We have a bit of a packed house tonight. We're joined by two of our usual co-hosts, Jason and Marc. Go ahead, wave, guys, or say hi, or whatever you want to do.
Yo!
Yo!
And we have two guests tonight to talk about our special topic, or whatever, special guests to talk about our topic. How's that? We got Chris and Jaimie, so say hi.
Hi.
Everybody say
Hello.
hi. Everybody wave all at once. It's a party, right? So, Chris, I know from our Defcon 610 group. He's recently, I guess recent, maybe not the right word anymore. He pivoted from an ops role to an information security style role, penetration testing. Part of what he did to do that was using training he learned from Capture the Flag contests online. And Jaimie is a recent new employee, coworker at Red Hat with Marc and I, and she recently participated in the Red Hat internal CTF. This is the first CTF you've ever participated in, right? I mean, like,
Yes.
word searches don't count.
No. I've played
Pothole Pirates
actual
represent!
Yeah. So, in case you haven't guessed, tonight's topic is we're going to talk about how Capture the Flag contests may be beneficial to sort of like your own personal growth or your own maybe learning or whatnot. So, I was going to start quickly by just giving folks some basics about what the heck a CTF or Capture the Flag contest is, in case anyone listening doesn't know. It's pretty basic. It's kind of an not online. It's a game, except the game is it's like a cross between sort of a technology-related learning event and a scavenger hunt, almost, right? The idea is you have to solve challenges, puzzles. You have to break into things sometimes, all with permission, of course, to find these flags, which are then scored on a scoreboard somewhere. Sometimes just for fun, sometimes you win prizes, and the whole concept here is that whoever does the best, gets the highest score, wins prizes. Well, some of us aren't that good, right? And we just do it for fun. And for those folks, there's a lot to be gained, and at least that's my opinion. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about tonight. So I wanted to touch kind of briefly on what the qualifications you might need to participate in a CTF are. And personally, I feel like those qualifications are pretty low. You need to be at least familiar with a computer, and you need to have a willingness to learn and possibly learn from others, maybe get involved with a team or a group, and just kind of come along for the ride. If you're obviously, if you're in it to be a serious competitor, you need to come with some skills. But so that's kind of the background, what a CTF is, why the heck we're talking about it. So I thought we would just kind of go into really, Jaimie, like how do you feel about having participated in this CTF? I mean, Marc and I were both over our heads for a lot of these challenges. I can only imagine how you felt on some of these.
So much drowning.
Yeah.
I would not say some of them. I would say all of them. I mean, I have, I'm in customer success, so I don't really have the background as far as being able to do. I think looking over some of those challenges, had I just gone in there and read them, I would not have known where to start. But I do feel like both you and Marc opened my eyes to something I'd never really been exposed to, and it seemed very attainable.
Legally.
Obviously, legally, it was a lot of fun. It made me less intimidated, I think, about certain areas of tech, and as you both know, when you guys were on calls, I was like, I can try this. And then, I was trying to Google how to do certain things. And I think I said this to you earlier, Marc. I said, you know what, this really made me wonder, had I been exposed to this, earlier in life, would I have maybe taken a different path or spent more time to learn these things? And that's really cool to be exposed to something that just seems so out of reach and be like, oh, this is awesome. Like, with some study, I could totally start to do this.
So sorry, go ahead, Marc.
No, I want to react because we have this attitude sometimes that, oh, if I had just started this stuff when I was 12 or 19 or 20.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
So you're about the age my dad was when he pivoted completely from selling insurance to hanging up his own tile as an independent computer consultant, having bought an Apple II and learned all this stuff. We learned side by side, he and I. I was in high school, and he was, again, about your age. And the dude became one of the best computer consultants, and I'm not just saying that because he was my dad, in Ocean County in the 80s, because that's when you could really just blaze that trail. Man. So it is absolutely not too late for you to learn stuff. You've already done more nerdy things than some of the folk who have been CSMs, the role you have at Red Hat, for a couple of years. I mean, you friggin' pulled a Docker container from a registry and then shelled into it. Now, granted, Nate and I told you how to do it, but you still did it. But yeah, that is cool. I like the attitude, but if you enjoyed it, it's absolutely not too late to learn some of this stuff.
So
I agree.
This honestly is you may not know it, but a great segue. So, Chris, obviously, you already worked in IT, but in a very ops-focused role, and you pivoted. You basically decided you wanted a career as a penetration tester, right? And online CTFs is one way that you help skill up in that. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because I don't know how old you are compared to Jaimie, and if if you could say it's a fine time to change a career, but it's a good example is what I'm getting at.
Y'all are making me sound old.
You're probably younger than us.
I'm 43, but
I'm only slightly younger than that.
Okay.
but yeah, I was working in an ops role, like a lead sysadmin for a decent sized company, and then with my ADHD, I decided to hyper focus on something random. So it was Ippsec videos on YouTube. So if nobody knows who that is, he's a YouTuber. He basically does walkthroughs of all the Hack the Box videos, which is a CTF site. And I sort of just got enamored. And so I'm like, maybe I'll give it a try. And turned out it was really fun. I didn't intend to be a career. It just sort of worked out that way. I couldn't stop doing it, and I sort of fell in love with it. And I turned out to be somewhat good at it, so just leaned into it, and it worked out, But I had no intention of like, oh, I'm going to change my career. It was just like, man, this is fun. And then it's like, oh, maybe I can. Let's give it a shot.
Right, but I think that's actually, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little, it's more fluid that way, right? So you found a thing you were interested in. You found a thing that you thought was enjoyable, and it happens that was a career move, or it could have been a career move, and you decided to make it a career move, right? And that's really, that's kind of the point here, right? So you can get involved in a capture the flag contest in lots of different ways, right? There's online offerings. There's some of them are free. Some of them you have to pay entry or whatever. At least I assume you do. I don't know. Does Hack the Box have is there like a pay tier there, or is it all free?
Yeah, there's the content is the same, except when you pay, you get access to the retired machines, and you get access to this VIP area that isn't like stormed by a bunch of newbies.
What are you saying?
Well, I'm saying when you're trying to like work a problem, right? So like, oh, maybe there's a SQL injection, or maybe there's some kind of thing going on. Then you have people like brute forcing the machine, effectively DOSing it offline. It needs to be rebooted all the time. But yeah, I mean, I paid. I went hog wild on that thing. I couldn't get enough.
I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
So,
but I thought it was a valuable tool, because I would say there was something I just wanted to touch on earlier, because it isn't sort of like I think like an engineer, because like when you're a pen tester, you're not really an engineer anymore.
right.
So when you're like shifting into doing CTFs and like hacking stuff, you have to try to reprogram your brain and not think like an engineer. So like originally when I came to CTFs, you would think, well, I just need to have the appropriate level of skill and then I can do it. Well, that's not what it is at all. Like you're approaching every problem with the same frame of mind. So like you have to research it, figure it out, read documentation, like just have a hacker mindset of like, how could I break this? I would say almost engineering could help, but it could also be a hindrance, because you would assume,
Right. And
you like to give engineers the benefit of the doubt sometimes. Like, I would never do that. Why would anyone do that?
And we were
Well, you
talking
still
about
got, you
this a little bit while we were doing the sort of corporate CTF that Marc, Jaimie, and I were doing. You don't necessarily have to solve a puzzle in the way that the person who designed it intended you to solve it, right? So sometimes approaching it, not knowing how you might build this particular piece of infrastructure, might give you insight into a better way to solve the puzzle, right? Because you're not thinking like an engineer, right? To your point, Chris.
Right. Yeah, there becomes a lot of stuff that looking back now that I, break into stuff and that's my entire world. Think of all the shortcuts I made with like password reuse, or like even talking today of like, AD accounts on a printer, what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
Things you wouldn't think of. You're like, no one's going to look at that, or that's just, I got enough on my plate. I can't be dealing with the fine details of everything.
Yeah, that's not even a privileged user account. I don't care if it's got a simple password.
Yeah.
Until you figure out that that's how they got in, right? Or that's how you got in as a pen tester.
Well, yeah, have a AD joined account is That's good stuff. That's a good
That's
start.
that's like the goal, right? Right.
Yeah.
So we and I keep going back to this internal CTF because that's really the only experience Jaimie has with CTFs at
Oh, yeah.
all, right? Marc, I don't know. Have you and I poked at Holiday Hack last year, didn't we? Or didn't we? I don't remember now.
So Holiday Hack, I definitely made an account, and I had every intention of banging on it hard, but I'm pretty also legal. But I feel like I got distracted and never really made progress.
So was this
The
really your first experience as well?
This was the first time that I was on a team where I felt a level of commitment to try and drive forward and be competitive. And I got to be honest, I really liked the team aspect of it. And for those who like what Nate and I did, like we knew that Jaimie wasn't really going to be like have the nerd creds, but we knew that she's very clever. I've known her for quite a few years,
Thank you.
and she might be able to like give us some ideas. And then at the very beginning, we're like, well, you're going to be the one doing all the typing. You know,
Right.
you're going to be the one in the terminal, and we're going to use your fingers and your eyes legally to kind of see what's going on and to operate it. Because I figured by osmosis she would then learn some Linux nerd stuff, and she did. And one thing that's cool about Jaimie is you generally don't ever have to tell her the same thing twice. She might not know something, but when you teach her something once, she's very sticky in a good way there. She tends to retain what you teach her. So she actually I think turned out to be a pretty good teammate. I was looking through the write up because InfoSec releases a write up afterwards, and I'm looking at some of these challenges and I'm like, there is not a snowball's chance in all of the nine hells that we would have made any progress in this.
I need
Because
to go back and look at the Stego
s-
challenge. I
the
felt like I
skill-
was close on that, and I just didn't know where to go next.
yeah,
Is
the
that the
the s-
picture one?
Yeah, the picture
Yeah.
one.
the skill sets for some of these challenges were insane.
Oh, some of them were definitely crazy. I mean, we spent it might have been 6 hours on that memory dump one.
Right, and that felt so good when we cracked it. The This challenge gave us it was a memory dump, and we had to find the flag, and we had to find the process ID and the user that was running it. And it was a Linux memory dump, and there's this tool, Volatility. Did I say it right?
Volatility, yeah.
Volatility, whatever. Well, the newest version of Volatility, by the way, and this is sometimes what happens with open source, it doesn't work like the documentation says it should work. Like you actually go and you type commands, and it just doesn't.
It's because
doesn't freaking do it.
all the how-tos you find online are still for Volatility 2.
Right, but this
but
was
3 is the latest. Yeah.
Yeah, but these were the docs on the GitHub for version 3 in theory.
Okay.
So that was super frustrating. Fortunately, Nate had an old version of it still installed, and we spent the majority of the challenge was like taming the tool and making
Yeah,
the tool
Right,
work.
right. We had to build what I don't even remember what it's called now. A map or whatever. We had to build a map.
We had
and
to
then
build, yeah.
yeah.
And then it was like, oh well, there's the process, but
What do we do
so-
with it? Yeah.
and then I'm like, wait a minute, there's that one flag where we can get we can like get either a process map or whatever. I'm like, let's try that and see what happens. And then it blows the process up into all the different threads and these other memory chunks.
Every little
and I'm
hunk of memory and yeah.
like, holy shit. And by the way, had we picked the process, well, about the only userland process that wasn't just part of X Windows was Emacs. So basically, InfoSec trolled us by doing this in an Emacs memory buffer
Yeah.
because we're, of course, all VI guys, as Linus intended.
Everybody. You're right. Everybody at Red Hat
yeah.
likes VI, right? It's totally
I'm an Emacs fan, but it wouldn't be as Linus intended. It would be as Bill Joy intended.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So
what we,
oh,
yeah,
sorry,
then
go
we-
ahead.
oh, and then we started to dig through the memory dump of the Emacs process, and there's so many memory chunks, and Nate and I sat back and we're like, you know what? And this is mostly Nate. We should only look at the ones that are read write because the others are just going to be the the libraries and shit.
Right.
And so we just kept going each memory dump and grepping for the flag. And suddenly the flag appears on Nate's screen, and I think we didn't even catch it for like half a second or two.
Right.
And they're like, the flag! The flag!
That was
We
quite the
actually
moment.
figured it out!
It was quite the moment.
Yeah. So, and of course at that point it was past, work had been done for a while already.
Yeah, it was like 5:45 or something by the time we got this.
And it was the last flag we finished because time ran out at 2 in the morning, and
Yeah, it was only a two-day thing, so that was cool. So, where I was leading with that, that was great, Mark. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to to say anything, but where I was leading with that was, as first-time participants to a capture the flag contest, and I thought this was just Jaimie, but it's Mark as well. How'd you feel about the whole experience? Like, do you feel like it was just like an aggravating waste of time, or I get the feeling that you don't feel that way, but.
I'm gonna let Jaimie go first.
I would use one of those words.
It was aggravating, that's for darn sure.
It was, I really had no idea what to expect, and I think you described it perfectly. It was definitely more of a scavenger hunt, than maybe necessarily capture the flag in the schoolyard sense, but
There was no running involved.
once we got that first challenge down, I was pumped, and then I was so frustrated because obviously I had more bandwidth. You guys had to actually then go do work, and I was like, I can keep digging around in here, and I was like, oh, there's nothing I can do, and I think Chris, what you described, it kind of hooks you. Where I thought, what do I need to learn so that I could contribute more or try to do these things. So some part of me is like, is there like a baby version of this, or some sort of like kids class I can take, and then want to do it again because the competitor in me was like, we have to win. So but yeah, so it was definitely frustrating, but it was a very cool experience, and I can see why so many people did participate, and maybe Red Hat can do that for CEE. Make some sort of game.
Yeah, so
capture the customer or something.
I came into it knowing the sort of competition we were going to have, not expecting that we were going to be anywhere near the top of that scoreboard. So
We were not.
as much fun as it was, and that competitive spirit, believe me, I get it. It's like you want to rack up the score, but I never had. Call it pessimistic, but
We
I
weren't
accepted
last
our fate.
place, though.
we weren't last place.
I'll take it. I found it frustrating at times.
I think we were both getting very frustrated with that memory dump one, and I think we almost gave up on it once or twice.
We did, but there were some of them, like the one with the cell tower. I should have known because it was a 1,000-point challenge that it was not going to be as easy as I thought, and yeah, that one ended up becoming something I don't think we would have ever gotten.
It's
So
not far.
the thing to remember with these challenges, remember I said before how you don't necessarily have to solve it the way that the person who wrote it intended. And I think I told you two this when we were chatting over the challenges. At 2 years ago, Defcon 610, we ran a Pubcrawl CTF challenge, which, by the way, is happening again. In fact, it's just 2 weeks from now, I think. It's the weekend after this.
A week
we'll-
from Saturday.
We'll talk about that in the announcements. But there was a challenge there, and Chris, I forget if it was yours or not, but there was a challenge where there were 3 tiers of flags, or 2 tiers of flags. And the first one, you had to basically get into a web shell. And I got that one because that was relatively easy to get into. I got into the web shell, and I got the flag, and I'm good to go. And then the second one, which was worth like twice as many points or something, was whoever created it had a different idea in mind about how you were supposed to get the flag. But I'm a sysadmin, and they gave me a shell. So I used the shell, and I got all the other flags. And I probably got 500 points, or I don't know, whatever it was, out of that one thing. And they're like, oh, did you do this, this, and that? I'm like, no, you gave me a shell. I used the
Foolish
shell.
mortal, you gave me a shell.
I found your flags through the shell, and then they're like, oh. So I have no idea how I would have solved them had I not had that shell, right? So that's a perfect example of, like, you don't necessarily have to. Doesn't necessarily mean that the high point value challenges are definitely going to be a challenge if you think outside of the box.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is that a lot of the like well-made CTFs, like they sort of have the guardrails on, and it isn't really about finding alternate ways. It's sort of just trying to, take the information you have and use deductive reasoning and try different things while keeping a cool head, which I think is the coolest thing. And just being comfortable knowing that like you don't know what the hell you're doing.
I felt like that the whole time. So
Yeah. That's what it is. Like, so it's like some of these CTFs, I'll take down like a really, really hard one, and the next one could be easy, but it's like something I never encountered before. Like, I don't know anything about this, so it's like, oh, it's time to hit the documentation or play around, take notes, like I think that's important, is just to like not give up and not think you're dumb because you didn't figure it out in like 10 minutes,
Right. That definitely being persistent and not convincing yourself that you're completely out of your league is the way to succeed on these things. Now, obviously, especially in a challenge like we were in where you only had 2 days to get it done, there was a certain time aspect, right? If you spent all of your time on one flag and didn't get it, then you got no points, right? So, Jason, you've been pretty quiet. I don't know how many... I know you and I talked way back at the beginning of the DerbyCon years about trying to compete in their CTF, and we never did, right? Because we always thought we were going to be completely outclassed. Did you ever actually sit down and do any of them? Do ever a CTF? We cannot hear you, Jason. I don't know if you're muted or if there's a mic problem. Now he's just yelling at it.
I do hear a buzzing. Is it plugged in all the way?
Have you tried turning it off? No, don't do that again. Don't do that. That'll mess up everything.
do I need to get the puppets?
Yeah, get the puppets.
What's Jason?
Jason didn't pick a puppet.
We'll let Jason be the moo cow.
He could be the cow. The buzzing stopped.
Cow.
Brr.
Well, it stopped when he muted.
Are you having mic problem? Well, I guess we'll have to talk about something else until Jason figures
like
out his mic.
He's like a set of speakers from the early 2000s when you get a phone call.
Yeah, right. Anyway.
So I'm gonna quote Jason. I'm gonna quote him from chat. He said, "My favorite experience is a challenge we had when I was taking comp sci classes. It was called the bomb." Well, that sounds intimidating.
It does, doesn't it?
It was super intense, and I spent days on it. Learned so much and had so much fun. But it's not for the faint of heart. You need to know or learn assembly code to do it. I've programmed an assembly language. I had a college course in it that I don't remember passing. So yeah, I can imagine that was fun.
Can you hear me now?
Hey,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay, you can put the cow away.
All right.
That's wonderful. Yeah, my headphones got really loud. That's awesome.
Now you're on the wrong mic, I assume, but at least we can hear you.
Am I?
So that's okay.
I don't know. It says, oh no, it switched it. I have no
Well,
idea.
you
It
sound
said
like
it was on the
Jason,
right one.
so that's
But
good.
Yeah, it's
Well,
good
we'll
enough.
we're just gonna roll with it. Yeah. So the bomb. So I've done the occasional CTF, like little bits and pieces here and there. Most of it is I sort of get bored quick on it because I don't do a lot of InfoSec hacking security like from the attacker side, so I'm not familiar with the tools. So I'll hit like the easy challenges, and then I'll just be like, yeah, I know there's more here, but I don't have the time to dig into the tools to figure out how to get into the rest of the stuff. The one you mentioned, the bomb, that was probably one of the coolest things I've ever done. It's not a CTF like we're talking about here. So here we're talking about specific challenges set up to find flags, and you basically report the flags for points. The bomb is a comp sci challenge that the professor that I had happened to use, and I know it's used in other comp sci courses as well. basically they give you a binary blob, and it's just an executable, and you run it, and it pops up with a question, and the objective is to find the answer to the question. And it turns out there's 20 questions and 20 unique answers, and you have to figure out from this binary blob that you have what the answers to those questions are, because if you get them wrong, the bomb blows up.
Oh.
And you get there's a scoreboard.
So
and
you
get
can't
3
just
strikes.
try them all.
Yeah.
Right.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. So the whole purpose of this is what was this? This was I don't think it wasn't an internals class. It was, I forget which class it was exactly.
I remember you were, we were working together at the time. He was taking this class at the college the two of us worked together at. And
Right.
I remember you, because we used to carpool. Listeners will know that. But he was telling me all about it, like on the drives home, and he was damned excited about it. It sounded like quite the interesting challenge.
I spent days on this thing. So
didn't you like figure out how to disable the bomb mechanism so that you could continue trying or something like that? I thought you told me that.
So yeah. So it's the way that it works. Part of this is honor system, right? Because to go to the lengths necessary to make it so that you didn't have to rely on the honor system is a little insane. Basically, if I put this on a box that didn't have network access, I could hammer on this thing all day long and never get a negative point on it. So there's a whole honor system behind it of following the rules that they give you, which CTFs have as well. Because again, same with the CTF, you can get in there and disrupt things, and lots of contenders have, and a lot of the larger CTFs have gotten to the point where they sort of monitor that stuff, and if they catch you get booted. But the bomb was you have this binary blob, figure out how to get the correct answers out of it, which turns out to be throw it into a debugger, walk through the assembly code, figure out where things are, put breakpoints in, figure out where it's going to jump in order to get to the next message, figure out where it's jumping to figure out what the answer is. And you can put all the different breakpoints and modify it as you go through and get those answers. I defeated in the end. I got one hit against me because the parser that was in it wasn't that great, and I didn't have a. So there's a fast method that they want you to use to present all the answers. You put an answer on each line, and then you just feed it the name of the file, and it runs the answers through. You need a carriage return at the end, or that last answer doesn't count.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So that ended up like I knew I had the answer. I was very upset. But yeah, that marred the perfect score on it. But it was a ton of fun. I had printouts of assembly code all over the place and lines and drawings, and so
Sounds
it's
like
out
fun.
there. It is public. It's open source out there somewhere. If I can find the link to it, I'll throw it in the show notes. I have
That's
it
cool.
buried in my email somewhere.
There's
So
some
x86 machine code, I assume.
Yep. It's not anything super crazy. It's basic assembly, but it is a ton of fun.
I just wanted to comment that the cool thing about that is like Jaimie, when you were working on that CTF, like when you encounter new stuff and you're like, I never heard of that before. Let me like look it up. It's kind of intriguing. And the next thing you know, you're like, oh, I know this one little thing. And so the next time you encounter it, you'd be like, I already know that already.
I know that.
Or at least I
piece.
know what I'm looking for.
Yeah. What's
you know?
the next thing I need? Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I started learning assembly more, was like doing these CTF challenges. Like, what's the instruction to jump? What are these registers doing? Like, you know? And it all came from doing CTFs. You know, it's like, it isn't just the machines, but Hack the Box has like, you know, like the forensics memory dumps that you were talking about, or like these binary crack me challenges. Like, that's it. That's all it is. Just investing this time. You're like, oh, I got that endorphin rush because I got the flag.
Yeah,
You
and I
know?
mean that's how both the memory dump challenge and the steganography challenge were for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last year's CTF, they had a similar memory dump one that I hacked on for a while, and I didn't get it. it was basically the same challenge, except it was a Windows memory dump and it was a Notepad buffer you had to try to get out. This time it was a Linux memory dump and it was an Emacs buffer you had to get out. But last year I was close, but I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the buffer out. And this year, the information that I had figured out last year came back to me, and I was able to use that to give us a little bit of a head start on this year's, because I recognized some of the keys from last year's memory dump, right? So, and with the Stego one, completely new. I've never done a steganography challenge, and I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. So I went to Scarab in the Defcon 610 group, and I said, hey, can you give me where do I start? Right? Like, I don't even know where to start. And he pointed me in a direction, and I started going with it. I didn't solve it, but maybe next year, if they have a Stego challenge, I'll have a base and I'll be able to solve it then. I don't know.
So, Chris, let me ask you, because looking at the write-ups that our InfoSec team did, there were some tools that, oh yeah, you use this tool.
Yeah.
So, is there, like we talked about volatility, right?
Right.
As a memory dump analysis tool, and I don't know if that's considered like the gold standard or whatever. We've got this CTF challenge coming up, a week from Saturday. There's a couple of tools that we're expecting people to have, things like Nmap or whatever.
Yeah.
So what would be like if you were to put these tools in like a belt around your waist, with a Batman symbol on the front of it? what would, like, for folk getting into CTFs, what are maybe the top half dozen tools that you're always using all the time?
Oh, well, if we're talking CTFs, like machines that you break into, not like memory dumps and stuff like that, because that's very specialized. I would say for sites like Hack the Box or Vuln Hub or like any of the Try Hack Me's, whatever came up, it's usually a web app that's an initial shell. So pretty much Burp Suite is the main program to use for web app hacking. I pretty much use that for all the web app hacking I do. It's just a middleman proxy program. And then, the normal stuff for like a port mapper, like Nmap, or mass scan, whatever you want. But Nmap has scripts. And then stuff related to it, like directory enumeration programs like Dirbuster, GoBuster, whatever you want. Like, that's usually it for the web. And then there's other programs that you kind of learn to do Windows Privesc and Linux Privesc to kind of check to see what's going on. Like Linenum or Linenum is one for Linux, and then WinPs and LinPs.
And what do those do? They run against the system and look for common
Yeah.
and
So
exploits?
usually in CTFs, it isn't really the exploit. So it's usually when you're in those CTFs, you get some sort of initial shell or shell-like thing from the web app. And then once you have that shell, you're like, what now? Because usually, like, on Linux, so like www-data, and then, yeah, you need like a tool to like look around, like, hey, what's sudo doing? You could check that. What's any set UID binaries? So like, in the Linux world, binaries that run as root, right? So if you could leverage those somehow, you can, get root, or at least read and write files as root. But in like Windows, I don't know, it's too easy for me to get in the weeds, but there are programs that can help you find those things. So you don't have to manually type them, because they're just time savers.
Yeah,
But
because
if
every
you're
command in PowerShell is 27 characters.
Yeah. I think
So is there like a landing page or a wiki or something that as a novice you could go to and like learn, like, here's the tools of the trade when you're up against this particular
there
tool?
might be. I don't know what it would be.
Okay.
Either. Because I sort of just took it, like what you guys were talking on the CTF that you're doing. Like, that's the first thing I did. I tried like a hack the box thing. I had no idea what I was doing. I watched all the Ippsec videos where him doing it. So I'm typing the command, and as I'm typing it, I'm hearing his voice, So like Nmap, SC, SV, you know. But you sort of build up as you go. I think it would be, I don't know if it's a disservice to feel like you need to have this like set level of knowledge before you can participate. I would say just dive in. That's the best way. Like learn as you go. Don't
I
be
think you have to
scared.
know something though, right? Like I think
Yeah.
I would not have been able to start without my teammates.
Yeah, I suppose.
Well, we definitely
Yeah.
got to points where we're like, where do we go now? Like Axl Rose
Yeah.
is singing in the background. Where do we go now? And
Finding
that is
finding
hard.
a good team to work with when you first start out is sort of essential.
Yeah,
There's
Yeah.
it's like with anything, right? You generally didn't learn to drive on your own either. You had someone who knew how to drive
No.
sit there with you and teach you how to drive. I'm sure some
Yeah,
people learn
there's-
how to drive on their own, but generally,
there's a CTF that floats around some of the BSides conferences amongst other places called Pros versus Joes, and it's exactly what it sounds like. They get intro, like, you know, newbies, and they pair them up with professionals to do CTF, and they learn through the process. I mean, it's
That's
just watching them live at the conferences is fun, and they're doing a bunch of remote stuff now as well, so that people can join in.
and so if there's interest, Jason and I already talked about. In fact, we were talking about possibly having them come on this show, but we decided that would just be too many people. We may do a follow-up show where we talk with folks who run CTFs, including the Pros versus Joes and who knows who else. And generally, every year we have Ed Scotus from the Holiday Hack Challenge, Counter Hack, I guess, and various other things he's involved in, come on to talk about Holiday Hack. So those will be things that are coming up. I mean, that'll be probably November or December we have him on, but assuming he's willing to come back on the show. He always says he likes us, but you know how that is.
The really cool thing about Holiday Hack is that as you they've turned it into a video game, and as you walk around, at least the past 2 years, they've had little they're what it is, it's Docker containers behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But you log into those containers, and they give you a full tutorial on how
Yes.
to do the thing that you're after.
Right.
So you learn all these different techniques on how to figure out where the flag is and how to get it.
The past
then-
the past
Yeah,
2
elsewhere is
years,
the real stuff.
the past 2 years of Holiday Hack, he's presented it like a virtual conference, right? But it's at the North Pole, right, and whatever. And they have legitimate talks from InfoSec professionals like Dave Kennedy and like other people that are like pros in this industry. And you can literally walk into a room, like a conference room, in this little game they've made, and you can watch a talk, or you can watch them on YouTube if you'd rather just do it in your browser. I guess it'd be in your browser either way, but you know what I mean. And then you take what they just taught you and apply it to a flag or to a challenge, right? And then you have to do a thing, and then that leads to the next thing, and you learn something else. Or there's an elf you talk to, and they say, oh, they give you a couple hints, and there's a blog entry somewhere you can go read about how to do that, right? And they're not all directly like, here's the thing and here's how to do it. As they get higher up in the challenge, they get harder and harder and harder, obviously, but especially those beginning ones. And that was really the first CTF I ever did, was the Holiday Hack Challenge back in 2016, I think it was. And it was just awesome. All these little terminals were right up my alley because I'm a Linux guy. I would just bop around in this little online world they had, and I would pop into a terminal and I would do some stuff. Oh, that didn't work. I'd try something else. Oh, that worked, whatever. And I had a blast. I would go back and play that one again, to be honest, just because it was fun. I got about halfway through that one, which is great considering it was the first first CTF I'd ever done, I think, anyway. So
That's awesome.
but yeah, those are great, and we'll talk more about Holiday Hack as it gets closer. That'll be open probably sometime mid to late December. I don't know what schedule. I don't have any insight onto what the schedule's going to be, but that's when that usually shows up.
Does that support a team, Holiday Hack? Or
In the past, it has not officially. They allow you to work as a team, but there's not like a grouping aspect where you're like officially a team. It's just, in fact, there's not even a scoreboard there. You solve things and you take notes and whatnot. And then at the end, you submit how you solved the stuff. And then they give out prizes, not even based on how far you got, but how well. Like the one team presented the solutions in the form of a song, and they won because they were creative and they, whatever. It wasn't necessarily that they beat everything, although I think they did. It was that they caught their attention and said, "Look at us," And the prize is like, it's like a Sans course or something. I forget what it is. Not that that's not worth.
I mean, that's pretty big.
Yeah, I know. It's not that it's not worth anything. I'm just saying it's not like they're giving you $1 million. Unless it's career changing, maybe that would be $1 million, worth $1 million. Anyway, it's a great thing, especially for beginners. And I think since 2016, I have not had the chance to really sit down and hack on the Holiday Hack Challenge like I really want to. But maybe this year that'll be different. I don't know. We'll
Stupid
see.
customers.
I know.
Well, I'm saying the Pothole Pirates can be resumed. We'll fly to the North Pole.
Yeah, totally.
Or drive on terrible roads up to the North Pole.
Yeah, that's what we called ourselves, by the way, the Pothole Pirates, because we're all in Pennsylvania. And we figured that's what Pennsylvania's known for, potholes.
And Scrapple.
Scrapple. We should have worked Scrapple in there.
Pig.
That's gross.
The pig puppet. The pig puppet.
So I have to ask, having a more of a business background, what would you start? So knowing, let's say we pirates get ourselves together for that holiday challenge, what would you advise someone like me to say, hey, go check this out? And maybe not even starting with Hack the Box, but something even simpler, like go learn how to do this one item before anything else, and it's gonna give you a little bit of a jump start.
So I'm partial because I'm a Linux guy, and you have access to free Red Hat training. I would take our Intro to Sysadmin online course.
I have another recommendation that might be useful for non-Red Hatters.
Go ahead.
That's helpful.
It's you might have heard of it. I'm sure a lot of people have, but a website called Over the Wire. They're a free website. They have these like learning CTF paths where it starts out easy, then it progressively gets harder each flag you get. And that sort of sounds intimidating, but it isn't just CTFs they want you to learn. So it's like, I forget the one, maybe it's called Bandit. That's the one that teaches you Linux, like slowly, the command line. So like you learn how to list directories, like how to find files, stuff like that. So that's a good free resource. Like I went through a couple of those, and they're progressive. And so like you get that, like you put in the work, and then you get the flag, so you get that endorphin rush, and you do it again. And at the same time, like you're having fun, but you're also learning like cool stuff that you can like use to do more,
That's awesome.
But I would say Over the Wire Bandit
Over the Wire
was pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean, Windows stuff can be a little hard because you have licensing issues, right? So like, but Linux stuff is a lot easier to get down. And usually a lot of CTFs, usually Linux or some sort of Linux like OS involved.
Yeah,
and
to be honest, sorry, I was just going to say basic command line skills is never going to hurt you, right, for this sort of thing. And that on whatever platform, I would say Linux is a great place to start, especially with the access to software that you've got. But anybody can go get whatever distro Linux they want to for free, put it in a VM and start tinkering, right? Mm-hmm. Jason, you were going to say something, I think.
Yeah, so one of the other things I would suggest is I mean, there's tons of sites out there that can teach you different things, but a lot of CTFs that I've seen focus on, part of it, some of it, it depends on what level of CTF we're talking about. I mean, when you're talking like some of the elite stuff, they're getting down into steganography and crazy, anti-forensic stuff and debugging and all sorts of craziness. But a lot of CTFs have some very low-level, quick, and easy flags that you can get, and almost all of them are based on what's on the OWASP top 10. So if you can look at the OWASP top 10 and understand what those are, almost every CTF you'll be able to get, half a dozen flags just like that. That's, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, that sort of stuff. A lot of web-based stuff.
Mhm.
Just don't do it in Missouri, because apparently it's illegal to look at source code in Missouri now.
Oh dear.
Awesome. I
So-
feel like
and
I feel like there should be a news article on that, but there probably isn't.
And I got a
There,
thought
there,
here.
there is, and I'll throw it in.
Good. Throw it in there.
So I got a thought here because the learning aspect, I was watching a couple of YouTube videos last night, and one of them was about the crazy My Pillow guy, who actually had a security symposium earlier this year, claiming he had actual evidence that China hacked the election, and his proof was a bunch of these screen dumps that were essentially just data dumps. So like with the scary looking hex code on one side and the ASCII on the other side. And the point here is that even if you don't think you're technical, learning how this stuff actually works a little bit in the real world can help you from getting fooled by morons who just because they show you a scary looking printout or a scary looking screen cap and you look and you're like, yeah, that's like HTML code. You have not hacked into my Amazon account, right? I mean, some of us, those of us in IT, have all heard the story of the guy who's in the airport, opens up his laptop, cracks open a terminal window, and people around him start freaking out. He's a hacker. He's hacking into air traffic control because scary terminal with green text. So the type of as you learn the stuff, even if you're not in a air quote technical role in your job, your career, or whatever, it educates you and makes you into someone who actually has a clue in our newer digital world, and I think that's pretty important. I just
I don't want to be fooled by morons.
Yeah, like, and
I get a shirt that says that.
I don't want to be fooled by morons.
I would warn that it would make you hate any crime drama show that has computers on it.
Oh yeah,
my God.
absolutely.
Yeah, I now can't watch them. They're
So
insane.
I'm now taking a note that we need an Iron Sysadmin shirt that says "Will not be fooled by morons."
That's our pirate chant.
But it was funny to see some of the interviews done with some real security experts who attended Pillow Guys conference, and they're like, yeah, like it was less than nothing. Like and there's this guy up on the stage. There's this guy up on the stage, and they've got the big projection with like the Windows file manager. It looks like a reg editor or whatever. And he's like, I'm not a tech guy, but I've been studying this elections, for whatever. Like, yeah, you just admitted you're an ignorant fool. It wasn't the Pillow Guy himself. It was some other guy.
Some guy supporting the Pillow Guy.
No, if you really want entertainment, there's on Twitter the username Errata Rob Graham.
Okay.
He's kind of a big deal in the industry, but he was there and he was live tweeting the whole time, every day.
That's awesome.
And we were patiently waiting for these dumps that never came. And they encoded this data in a spreadsheet, and they did a binary dump of a Word or spreadsheet file. It wasn't even like a real dump, and so
No, unless you're stupid.
Didn't he supposedly get mugged and they stole him or some craziness like that?
I don't know about that one. I miss a lot of Twitter, even though I'm on it 24/7.
We could be missing an opportunity here to protect the morons by stealing their stuff.
Totally.
Same.
That's how we need to do it. Steal from the morons to protect them? That doesn't sound like it's quite legal.
That's like bombing the village to save it. I think we tried that once, and it didn't work so well.
All right, so we've officially gone off topic, I think. However, I did want to at least close up this part of the show by saying I'm going to be putting a bunch, I should say we are going to be putting a bunch of links into the show notes for not only places that you can try free CTFs, but also things like the Bomb Lab that Jason was just talking about, and some learning resources that we just talked about. JSCAR was nice enough to throw a bunch of these into the chat. I tried to copy some of them down. Otherwise, I'll just get them. I'll make sure that they're in there. So to review, some of them that we talked about were Hack the Box, which is a free or pay, depending on if you want better access to some of the machines, online CTF challenge that you can just go and try your hand at things. The Holiday Hack Challenge is a really fun experience that Ed Scotus and team put on every year, again, for free. Try Hack Me, I think that's free. I've never tried it, but J-Scar was putting that into the chat. Try Hack Me is another one. Chris was just talking about Vuln Hub. I'll make sure to get the URL and put that in there as well. And another great way to do this with a more social aspect is just about every security conference worth its salt has some kind of CTF going on, whether it's a little thing or a big thing with prizes or not, or something like the Pros versus Joes that Jason mentioned. BSides Delaware will host Pros versus Joes, I'm assuming, even though they're virtual this year. Go, Jason.
I think it's still in the works. I believe the answer is yes, but I don't want to speak for them.
All right, so it might not. If it doesn't, then I'm sure that when they're back in person, that should probably be back. So, but yeah, DerbyCon hosted one every year. I know Defcon certainly has a CTF, although you may be afraid to go near it. But BSides conferences are a great place to meet these sort of people and learn in person from folks that might be willing to teach you how to participate in these things. And with that, I think we will probably go to a break. Does anybody here have any final words before we do that? Words of wisdom or anything? I see a baby in the background.
I would say if you're thinking about getting involved, don't feel like you need to have this base competency skill. Like if you know you're hacking into a Windows or a Linux machine, you'll need to know it. But if it's some kind of weird challenge where you just have to figure out a puzzle, like anybody could do that. And like even super smart people I work with come across stuff they don't know or never encountered, but they just move forward anyway. That's sort of that, like, you need that like hacker mindset. So I just want to, because I know that prevents a lot of people from going forward. And hate seeing it.
Let me clarify for just a sec. Hacker mindset is not necessarily a technology thing. It's a problem-solving mindset. It is think outside the box. There is a roadblock in front of me. What if I step 3 steps to the left? I just said right. I just said left and pointed right. 3 steps to the left, and walk around the roadblock instead of just standing here thinking I'll never get through. That is probably the easiest way to describe the quote-unquote hacker mindset. Think outside of the box, solve problems. Sysadmins have this skill set. Anyone who's ever solved a problem in their life has this mindset. You just got to unlock it. Anyway.
That's my cue to exit.
What does the tiny Knoll have to say?
She's used to hanging with me this late at night, so there's a dog licking her feet at the moment, off camera.
All right, Jason or Mark or Jaimie, anybody have some final thoughts?
I appreciate you guys including me. I would definitely say anybody out there who's listening, like I said, I have a business background. Get involved. It was a blast. I plan to keep trying when I have time. And hopefully that Christmas one sounds awesome. Hopefully I can come back and have a story about how much I've learned. But I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I mean, with any luck, we'll participate in that just a little bit anyway, and get some fun there.
So, secret hint about Holiday Hack: it's up year round. All of the previous years are there. Yeah,
I forgot to mention that. The new challenge comes around Christmas, but all of the previous ones, at least all the way back to like 2013 or something, are all still up there, and you can go hack around on them if you want to.
Yeah, I like J-Scar's attitude because this is how I kind of went into the Red Hat thing. Go to learn one new thing.
Yeah.
And if you can, definitely read the report afterwards if they give away the answers, because then you can see how close you were, how far you were, and you'll have a better idea how to progress next time. I feel like every time you're going to do one, maybe you get a little further.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to go to a break. We're probably going to shuffle around some hosts and guests here, and we'll be back in, I don't know, give us 10 minutes tops, and we'll see you guys after the break. So stick around. We'll see you then.
Push the button, Frank.
Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you. Are you a fan of the Iron Sysadmin podcast? If you are, don't forget you can support the show via Patreon at patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Or you can buy merchandise at teespring.com/stores/ironsysadmin. And thank you.
We have returned, folks. Sorry, I'm just fixing.
I'm leaking out of my there. So
I've
much
totally
better.
fixed it. I used the transition music as a buffer to let me get that fixed.
Yeah, because it's like when your pants are kind of like not in the right position, you need to adjust them.
But you know what? You know what you forgot to remind me to do?
Start the recording.
Yeah, here we go. And now we're recording again. I guess I have to do it again now. It's always something. So we're a little bit less of a Brady Bunch now and a little more of a just me and Uncle Mark.
Dynamic duo.
Dynamic duo. There you go. To stick with the...
Which I guess probably makes me Robin, which is disturbing.
I mean, that is kind of disturbing.
I wouldn't say we're missing them. No, yeah, the other three had to bounce. I mean, Jaimie had the best excuse.
Yeah, right. Screaming baby.
Her husband's an Eagles. No, she actually wasn't screaming at the time, but her husband's a bit of an Eagles fanatic. The game's starting. He was a good sport. Yeah.
There may be somebody in our listenership that understands sport ball.
Sport ball.
And gets that.
And they're at the point where, like, yeah, he's Finley's dad, but honestly, Finley likes Jaimie a lot better.
Yeah.
And those of us who've been parents, we get that.
Babies pick. They pick.
And it's usually the mother, sadly.
They pick.
Or whatever.
Our kids, our oldest, would not let my wife put her to bed. Whenever I was traveling for work, it was like a nightmare for her because she could not get that kid to go to sleep.
Oh, dear.
She'd have to sleep in bed with her. That's the only way she could get her to go to bed. And with our youngest, it was the complete opposite. I couldn't get her to go to sleep, and yeah, so I get it. Kids pick favorites. Kids pick favorites, and to this day, our older daughter is more attached to me than her mother, and vice versa with the other one. So
it's my youngest daughter, for me, is the close one. But anyway.
Yep. So anyway, we're back. In case you didn't notice, I hope you guys enjoyed the segment about CTFs, and I hope you all go out and try a Capture the Flag contest. You guys might remember that we're splitting the show in halves, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to have to go back and listen to the first half of the show where we talked about CTFs. So go back. It'll be episode 109A.
If Nate did his job, yeah, it'll be friggin' obvious that this is two parts, and you're watching part 2, but you missed the first part where the $6 million man figured out what was going on, and then it ended the cliffhanger. So now you're picking up with the cliffhanger resolving.
Yeah. Although
not nearly as satisfying.
I don't know if there's much of a cliffhanger, except that you don't know what we talked about at the first half of the show. But we don't have to talk about that anymore, because what we do
less important.
What we do need to do is talk about our awesome patrons. So we picked up a new patron this month.
Really?
I don't know how to pronounce this. It looks like some sort of a user ID.
Let's take a look.
For fferauu? Maybe it's a French name. I don't know. So they are our newest. Yeah, there's 2 F's at the beginning and 2 U's at the end, and there's an era in the middle. There's totally an era in the middle. There's an era between the F's and the U's.
Well,
wait a second.
I don't care how you say it, but
thank you. That's how we say it.
Thank you.
And for the rest of you lovely people, we've got Name Pending 197, Jérémy with the little accents.
Jérémy!
Arinomi, Andrew, Tatro, Bruce, Robert, Matt, David, Solemn with the 0 and the 3 in there, Trooper-ish, Linux Sys 666, gimpyb, Marc with a K, DeMentor or DeMentor, if you look up our Discord. You'll find him as the Mentor, but he's DeMentor on Patreon. John the Nice Guy, Marc with a C, Julius, Andi, Jay, Charles, and our good old buddy 22532. So, thank you to the patrons for getting us. I mean, it's
all of them.
We're like, yeah, shout out to all the listeners, but these folks, they collectively give us a little over $100 a month, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. And speaking of changes to Patreon, I recently made a change to the Iron Sysadmin tier, which is a tier on Patreon that you can be a not that kind of tier, which is $15 a month. Where if you are a patron on that tier for I think it's 3 months, you get a T-shirt. So if you can also just go buy a T-shirt if you want to through Teespring. That's completely up to you. But if you want to help the show out a little more and get a T-shirt, go be a patron for 3 months. You'll get a T-shirt and all is well. Now, this is the first time I'm trying to use Patreon for fulfillment like that. Patreon will literally make that shirt and send it. I don't know if they have like an army of unicorns making T-shirts there.
Playbook?
Maybe. I really don't know. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And some percentage of your 3 months of $15 a month will go to paying for that shirt, and it'll get sent out to you, and I don't have to actually buy and send you a shirt. Not that I care. I will do that too. Which is the way I was doing merch for Patreon.
When's the 3 months start for those who have been patrons for a while?
So if you're already a member of that tier, I would assume that 3 months from the time I made the change, you'll get a shirt. I don't really know. I don't know how Patreon handles it.
When did you make the change?
Like a week ago. Maybe 2 weeks ago.
So
this past month. This month.
Yeah, so probably around Christmas time.
Yeah, there you go. Christmas. Merry Christmas. Get a shirt.
Merry New Year.
Yep. So yeah, those are some changes on Patreon. And like I said, if you'd rather just buy a shirt, go to Teespring, you can buy a shirt. That's a thing you can do.
I think that's excellent.
Yeah, cool. Let's see here. Another way you can support the show, you may know we recently switched to a different platform called Riverside. Not a platform for hosting the show, but for our shows. It's like to record our shows.
We're using it right meow.
Right meow. And they have like a partner program where basically if you go and register using our link, we get kind of credit for that. It's like a big MLM in the sky. Or the cloud.
Except there's no essential oils.
There's no essential oils involved.
And if you have not watched Lula Rich yet, and you have Amazon Prime, oh my God, it is something.
Lula Rich, huh?
What? So good.
I guess I'll have to check it out. I'm just guessing that this is some LuLaRoe empire.
There's two specials about MLMs that I've watched on streaming services that I highly recommend. The first one, like I said, on Amazon is Lula Rich. It's about the leggings people.
Yeah.
The other one is about probably a far more insidious one called Herbalife, and it's called Betting on Zero.
I remember
that. That's on Netflix. Betting on Zero.
I remember Herbalife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I was a customer. I just remember the name.
Yeah. Pay way too much money for crappy shakes that you could just.
Yeah. That's exactly what that was.
So they're both like really, really great documentaries about.
That's pretty cool.
MLMs, yeah.
So I would say that anyone who's ever curious about those whole pyramid scheme style MLMs, you can have up to 4 employees beneath you and you get residual income. Go watch those, right? And then before you go and buy in.
Right. And don't do the MLM anyway, because
don't buy in. Yeah, it's bad.
It's virtually impossible to make money unless you're one of the original people. And even if you're one of the original people, you're making money using a very corrupt system that takes advantage of poor people and people who can't do math.
Yes. Yep. So your public service announcement for the week: don't get involved with an MLM.
I'm very single-minded about them. I think they're evil.
I didn't know that like LuLaRoe was considered.
They didn't start as an MLM, but they became an MLM.
Okay. I'll have to go check out the
Just
show
like
you're talking
my
about.
mom was an Avon lady back in the 70s and 80s before they went MLM style.
Oh, are they no good now too?
They caved.
My wife did Mary Kay for a little while.
Yeah.
That didn't pan out either.
No, of course they didn't.
It did not pan out. All we really ended up doing was spending a bunch of money on the starter kit. Took us years to pay that crap off. Don't get involved in that crap, guys. It's a bad idea. But I think, I'm hoping that our listeners are smart enough to know that. And if you're not smart enough to know that, I'm sorry for not calling you smart right now. I really didn't mean to do that. Anyway, we were talking about announcements, I think. The next thing, Jason threw this in here, as he always does. BSides Delaware is coming up in November 12th and 13th. It is a virtual conference again. There are links to registration and the call for papers in the show notes. And last but not least, I mentioned the Defcon 610 Hacker Pubcrawl. That's coming up on the 23rd of October in Easton, PA. If you go to crawl.defcon610.org, you can see some info about how to get started on that. And that was a fun time. We did it in 2019. We did, of course, like everything else in the freaking world, we skipped it in 2020, and now we're coming back 2021. Hopefully, we have a decent turnout, and we can move on from there. Did you know? I think you were at you might have been at the meeting when we talked about this. Did you know that to be involved in a pub crawl, most organizers charge the pubs?
I was there when you guys were talking about that.
I had no idea.
I hadn't even thought about it myself, really.
Yeah, I when we set up the first pub crawl, I'm just like, oh yeah, it'll be a privilege for us to be able to have these folks on our crawl, and we didn't even think about like charging them. That's weird.
And that's why you're not rich, because
that's why we're not rich.
You don't think of every possible way to take advantage of people. I'm not either. I would.
Yeah, right. So
I mean, if I had played my cards right and monetized Nordoc back in the early 2000s. I could have been an internet something heir. I'd have more money than I do now.
You could have been 100 heir.
At least a couple. I could have made some money, I'm sure, but I'm like,
1,000 heir.
I just doing this for fun and giving it away.
Yeah, right. And that's, I don't know. We can get into a long philosophical debate about that, but it is kind of the American way to make money on everything you can. Sometimes that does not lead to a great outcome. Or maybe it doesn't lead to a great...
I like to think that had I tried
people.
to monetize Nordoc, and for those of you who have no friggin' idea what I'm talking about, I ran a very popular online fantasy world with using the Neverwinter Nights engine back when that was actually kind of hard to do. And rather than charging people to use it or charging people to host it themselves, I basically gave the module away to anybody who wanted to host it. And because of that, people still use it today.
Yeah.
And I feel that's a much better legacy than had I just made some money from it.
Yeah, and
knowing that the world I created is still alive.
Looking back at it, right? You may not have that legacy if you had tried to monetize it.
That's my point. It probably would have never gone beyond it would have never gotten as popular at the time because it was not nearly as easy for people to pay for stuff online.
Right.
So I would have had to. It would have been kind of crazy. And
they'd have been mailing you checks.
And then suddenly you're dealing with paying customers, and
now it's a job.
Yeah.
There's an expectation of service. Yeah.
To heck with that. So I like it how it turned out better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've totally sidetracked this, haven't I?
Yeah, well, that's okay because we finished the announcements. But yeah, the pub crawl. If you're anywhere near the the eastern side of the U.S., I think you should come to the Defcon 610 pub crawl because it's a good time. It's a fun CTF. You will be surrounded by people who are probably going to be willing to help you learn. Even Uncle Marc here has a flag that he's put into the CTF. It's right there in that Dragon Raspberry Pi case.
It is. I'm so proud of this.
That's a cool case. It really is.
I'm not very good at shit like this. I'm actually really proud of myself that I was able to put this all together.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So yeah, Defcon 610 pub crawl should be, kind of a low bar to entry. There should be plenty of flags that anybody with a little bit of knowledge can learn to do. It's a great intro to this sort of thing. We design it. I should say we tell the flag builders that it is best if they have at least some flags that are easy to attain because people are going to be at these pubs, they're going to be eating and drinking. It's more of a social event than a real CTF. Although there is a scoreboard, there are prizes. They're not like crazy prizes, but there's prizes. So things like a Raspberry Pi 4, and there's going to be a small cash prize, though we have not decided how big that pot's going to be just yet. But it won't be thousands; it'll be hundreds tops.
Yeah.
You could be 100-aire.
Unlike me from
Unlike Mark from Nordock.
But
All
it's
right.
okay. I've been paid well in my career, so I don't.
Yeah, right. It worked out just fine.
Yeah.
All right, we don't have any new reviews, so people go review. If you think you did leave a review in the past, God, it's been a month since we did one of these shows. If you did leave a review and you think we missed it, let me know and I'll go look it up and make sure we read it out on the show. We don't try to hide any reviews, good or bad. We'd like to let you guys know what people think, and
Unless people are jerks.
we're open like that, unless they're jerks and they don't like Uncle Mark singing. That guy was a jerk. For all we know, he's listening again, and we just called him a jerk. We're sorry, you're not a jerk.
He had his opinion. His opinion's valid. It was just, yeah. I didn't receive it as well as I could have.
There goes your internet connection again.
Oh, come on.
Oh, you're back again. We're good. We're just going to have to hurry through the rest of the show so that your internet connection doesn't die.
We're really not going to do that.
No, we're not. That's not going to happen.
It's just a probability game at this point.
Yeah, really. It could happen in a second. It could happen 3 hours from now. All right. So moving along, I've been doing a number of things. So anyone who doesn't know why we haven't recorded a show since this time last month is because last time we played Diablo 2 instead of recording a show.
That's right. It was fun.
Which might sound like we were shirking our responsibilities, but you know what? We do this for fun. Come on. Right. We did live stream it on the channel, so folks were willing to watch, or were not willing, were able to watch it if they wanted to. Welcome to watch it is the word I was looking for.
We even had a listener join us.
We had a listener join us, which was fun. So yeah. We're not going to make like a huge habit of gaming instead of doing the show. We just thought it'd be fun because Diablo 2 was a big part of really both of our younger lives 20 years ago. We both have fond memories of the game, and we decided it would be fun to play it because it was, re-released, revamped and re-released.
Remastered. And right now the servers are apparently in meltdown mode. They're having
Really?
all sorts of issues with them. Yeah, so
Wow.
the fact that I haven't been playing it for the past 2 weeks is probably good.
Yeah, well, that's because we've been playing No Man's Sky instead.
Well, there you go.
Which has been a whole, and that's really that's what I wanted to talk about in chat here, is that I have talked about the fact that Mark was kind enough here that when he upgraded his VR headset, he gave me his old one, an HTC Vive, which was from what, like 2019, 2018? I don't know how old the thing even is.
I bought it before the pandemic.
Okay.
I bought it in 2019.
Okay. So I don't know when they were released. Whatever. I haven't looked into it. It was a free VR headset. It works for what I want to do. I do notice a little bit of the pixelation that I think you were probably complaining about as to why you couldn't do your flight sim with it, but it's still very usable, right?
Yeah, No Man's Sky is perfect for it.
Yeah,
Microsoft
it's great.
Flight Simulator 2020, not some the instrumentation you can't read.
Right. So, at any rate, I got he gave me the headset, but not the rest of the stuff because he kept it, obviously, because he was not replacing his whole system.
He did it for the index.
So I had to go and get the base stations and the controllers and stuff, and I did that might be 2 months ago now, and I talked about that on the show. I'm rambling to just give you some backstory that I'm finally actually using the darn thing. Like everything new, I tinkered with it a bit. The kids tried some of the demo stuff. We tried some free apps, but the first game I really bought for the VR setup was No Man's Sky, and it is just so cool. And Mark and I have been playing it together because really he's the reason I bought it because he was talking so much about it. No Man's Sky, and Mark, you can probably talk a little better about this than I can. No Man's Sky is an older game. Looks like it was released in 2016.
It dropped in August of 2016,
It really didn't do well on launch day, like many games.
No, it actually the hype for it was so big, and so many of the features that people thought were going to be in the game were not in it, that I would say its launch was actually...
There goes your internet again. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I heard you perfectly the entire time.
So it's an upstream problem.
Upstream problem.
So
Yeah.
anyway, you were saying about the hype and the launch, and then
And
you.
the launch was an unmitigated disaster. And you don't have to do too much searching to read about the disastrous launch of No Man's Sky. And then something magical happened. Hello Games has spent the past 5 years redeeming themselves. They have released like 18 or 19 free updates, some huge, some medium, some small, and they haven't charged a penny more to anybody who bought the game on launch.
It's pretty awesome.
And it is looked upon as the poster child for here's how you restore your reputation and in fact become very highly praised after screwing up your game launch. Now that doesn't mean that it's okay to screw up your launch, but
You should try not to do that.
yeah, and they sold enough copies of it and have sold enough copies of it that they actually could afford to do this because people are like, how are they making any money? Well, the game actually did very well in pre-orders and has been it's every time they do a major upgrade, they tend to pick up more
Well,
people.
I mean, I'm the perfect example, right? So you liked the game. You said it was a great VR experience. Here I am, 5 years after the game launched, and I was all ready to spend $60 on it, which was the list price, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but I think you got it on sale.
It happened to go on sale, so I snap bought it because it was on 50% off sale. Sort of like how I just bought Fallout 4 VR for 70% off. Apparently that game is terrible.
No, it's not terrible. It's the VR is bolted onto it more than it should be.
Yeah. Anyway, I haven't tried it yet. I haven't installed it yet. But when it went on 70% off, I had to pay the $17 to buy it versus the $60 or whatever that it was listed.
If you're a Fallout fan, it's absolutely worth it. And
Yeah.
there's mods to make it better.
Yeah.
And by the way, so the thing about No Man's Sky is about a year or so ago, they actually did a release that released the VR compatibility, and rather than just it vaguely supporting VR, the way you interact with the game in VR is completely different than how you interact with it using a controller.
It is.
or the mouse
So
and keyboard.
here's the takeaway, given my mention of having to rebuy Fallout 4, right? So Fallout 4 I already owned in quote-unquote flat mode. I bought that years ago. Not when it was brand new, but it might have been a year into its release. And I enjoy the heck out of that game. It's a fun game. I had to rebuy it to get VR. Right? So there's a VR, modification, port of the game, which cost just as much as the original game did.
Yeah.
List price on that was $60. No Man's Sky, you can seamlessly play flat or VR. Now, I don't know if Fallout 4 VR will let me play it flat as well, but I won't, right? Because I've already got it in flat, right? I don't need to buy it again for that. But the fact that if I have 15 minutes to sit down and putter around in No Man's Sky, I can just fire it up and use it keyboard and mouse. If I want to sit down and have a VR experience, I'll hook up the headset and the base stations and stuff, and I can spend a couple hours in VR. And what Marc was saying about how they implemented VR, it is so fluid. They did such a good job, if you ask me, on how you interact with this game. I mean, and if you haven't played No Man's Sky, you may not really get the gist of all this, right? But it is like an open world space game where you've got planets to explore, things to build, ships to fly around. It's a flight sim, it's a survival game, it's a building game. I guess that's a similar survival game, building game. It's an exploration game. There's space combat elements. There's fleet building elements. There's so much to this game. And you could argue, we were just talking about this last night, about how not all of it is very deep exactly, but there's so many mechanisms in this game. If you're the sort of guy who wants to fly around the universe and buy and trade gear at the spaceports, you can do that in this game and just make $1 million. Well, more than 1 million. Units, they call them.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a really fun game. And to hop into it in VR, I think, Mark, you said it the other night, it's like I can go on vacation or I can go be a spaceman for the evening, right? And that's really how it feels.
I've said it's basically the holodeck at this point. And one of the things about having been into VR for a couple of years is you realize there's a lot of VR games that are sometimes nothing more than a glorified tech demo.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky is a full gaming experience that suddenly has the VR integrated in with it very well. So it's not a 15 or 20 minute or even like a 2-hour VR experience and that's it.
Yeah.
After William Shatner went into space, I fired up No Man's Sky that night and just kind of sat in my one ship that's got a really fantastic view in the cockpit and just kind of sat in an asteroid belt looking at a couple of the ringed planets. And it was just like, I'm there chilling.
Yeah.
And just think, it just really, you can have those moments in the game.
It's cool. I mean, you hear these science fiction tales like Ready Player One about how the world has moved to a virtual world, right? Well, No Man's Sky is the sort of game that gives you that. It's not like a real world, everyday economy sort of thing, but it could be. It's got all the elements, right?
So so I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's one of those games that I pick up every so often and I'll play it and then I'll put it down for a spell, but I always end up back in it and I always enjoy it when I go back to it.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. I do feel like there's going to be a point where I'll get tired of it and probably put it down just like you were saying, but we'll see. We'll see how long it takes to do that.
My suggestion is when you're done playing in normal mode, let's do a survival. You can do a survival mode, or you can do a permadeath run.
Yeah.
See how far you can get with permadeath.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, you die, you're dead. That's it. It deletes the save file.
So the other thing I picked up in VR, which I think is worth talking about, because anybody who's got VR has probably seen or tried Beat Saber.
It's friggin' lightsabers and music.
It is. It's such a simple game, and yet it is so fun and satisfying to just spend 2.5 minutes to an upbeat song slicing boxes in half.
Pretty good exercise too.
It is. There's even like exercise routines that you can do with it. I only have like the basic. It came with like a collection of 3 or 4 little music sets, and one of them has this thing they call Beat Fit, which I think is less about the song and more about getting you moving. And it is not easy. Even on easy, it's not easy, right? The kids tried it and they're just like getting all kinds of creamed by the walls and stuff you're supposed to avoid. But it's a lot of fun. The kids love it. We set it up. Me and the 11 and 7-year-old play Beat Saber for an hour or two in party mode and try to see who can get the best score on a song. And it's a lot of fun. If you don't have VR and you want something fun to do with the family and you've always been curious about VR, that I think of the VR helmet and Beat Saber and a couple nights with your family playing Beat Saber, to me it makes it worth it. No Man's Sky is awesome, but to be able to have that kind of fun with the family is just it's something else. You know?
Well, and Beat Saber, I think, is available on some of the more budget headsets.
Yeah.
Like the Vive or the Index, they're a pretty heavy investment for someone who's not sure. I mean, I bought the Vive after I went to a local VR cafe and paid for a 45-minute session. Because I had never seriously tried VR before that, and I walked out of it, I'm like, I need this.
I'll tell you what, I've looked at I should say I'm thinking about, next time I get some money, I'm probably going to buy an Index. Not because I don't like the Vive, but just because I would like a better resolution one. And then once I get, well, there's a whole series here, but I'd love to be able to have a separate headset for the kids to putter around with. Because whenever I hook the thing up, they notice and they're like, ooh, can we play? Because they love it that much.
It's like when you go to get a snack and then suddenly the dogs are like, food?
Exactly.
Food?
It's the exact same thing, right?
Food?
So to have a second headset, which sounds like such an entitled thing to say, to have a second VR headset so that the kids can play.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's a lot of fun. The only thing I did want to mention, if you have issues with motion sickness, it's a real thing in VR. I have, for my whole life, I've had issues with motion sickness in cars and things like that. And it's a thing I'm trying to figure out how to deal with in VR. There's ways to get around it by using like teleport mode instead of walk mode. But with something like a flight sim or a space combat game like No Man's Sky, like flying the ship, I start to feel a little queasy, right?
Yeah.
So I did some reading about it, and there's these things called C-bands. It uses pressure on your wrist to somehow help limit the nauseousness you get from motion sickness. So I ordered some. They're like $10. I ordered some. I'm gonna try them out, and I'll report back to you guys. So if anybody is like a VR fan but they can't play it for long, like me, because of the motion sickness thing, you know, if that helps, then cool. If anybody out there has suggestions on how to get over motion sickness in VR, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it, because
Well, you could be like me and grow up on boats, you know, down on the Jersey Shore.
you know what, I didn't grow up on big boats or sea-style boats, but I did a lot of boating as a kid, but generally on lakes and things, right? So maybe it's not the same.
It's not the same at
Yeah,
all.
yeah. Well, no, it obviously isn't, because there's no waves, right?
Right, you're
But
not going to get seasick.
You still have a similar like buoyancy thing going on. So, but anyway, it's definitely a thing I have to struggle with, and it's funny. Some nights I'll be in VR and not have a problem, and other nights it just, I don't know. After half an hour, 45 minutes of play, I start to feel like I really need to get out of this thing, you know. So, anyway, it's a lot of fun. The other thing I'm doing, which I'm not going to belabor too long because I've already gone on for probably 15, 20 minutes on VR, is I mentioned a while back that I'm printing these figures. First it was minifigs for D&D, and then it was like model-style figures. I've got two of them that I'm working on at the moment. One of them, if anybody's familiar with the old comic book from the 90s, and this has gone on for quite a long time, called The Witchblade. I was a fan of it in the 90s, mainly because I was a young man in the 90s and had a pretty girl on the cover. You know how that goes. But it's a good story as well, right? And there's animes, there's all kinds of stuff that's related to the lore of the Witchblade. But I'm printing a figure at 175% scale, so it's going to be bigger. I probably could have done 150 looking back, but anyway. It's been kind of a challenge because I printed it at normal size and I didn't like how it came out. Then I printed it bigger, and now it's like... Sorry, you...
Is it a one-piece print, or are you putting pieces?
No, it's pieces, and that's part of what I wanted to talk about. Sorry, what?
I generally don't care for doing pieces. I like to do one-piece prints when I can.
It would...
But, yeah.
So this is complex enough that I don't think you could print it in one piece.
And I hear you. And I can see, like, the Pi is 2 pieces.
Yeah.
This is my Apple Watch charger. Oh shit, it's stuck down. I can't say it. This is my Apple Watch charger, and that printed in 2 pieces. Yeah, I'm wearing Homer Simpson lounge pants.
Right.
Lounge pants, judge me. Right? So.
But yeah,
But that's not like 20 pieces that I have to attach
No,
together.
this is... Let me think. Each leg is a piece. There's a hips and thighs. There's a torso. There's each arm. There's a weapon she's holding. The head. The base is like another 3 pieces. There's decorations that go on the base that are a couple more pieces. It might be a dozen pieces that this thing's printing in.
That's not so bad because you can print them, like, if one mishap doesn't
That's the
blow
thing.
The whole thing.
That's the thing. And basically, it's been a bunch of trial and error, as you can imagine, right? So the head, I have a smaller version of it here. For those of you listening audio, this is not going to be useful at all, but the head has, like...
Nate has held up a head.
If you see this, like, her hair...
Her hair's crazy.
Right? There's all kinds of strands to it. They're not tiny, tiny strands, but they're tiny when you think about that it's 3D printed, right?
Yeah.
So that was a challenge to get to print properly.
Did you paint that? Or
This is the smaller version of it, by the way.
Okay.
So it came out on the camera. It probably looks just fine, right? But if you look at it close, there's like seams and stuff that I don't like.
What color PLA is that, or is it painted, or what?
It's black PLA, and I'd gotten as far as painting the base coat of skin, which is what you see white here, right?
Okay.
So, but anyway, it's challenging, right? And then the seams are what bothered me about that, because I found a way to not seal, but smooth the seams, but I couldn't get in there because I have these big human fingers and a teeny tiny model to try to sand on, and I couldn't figure out how to do that well. But I found that spot putty, so Bondo is a brand of body filler that you can use on cars and stuff, and they make this thing called spot putty, which is in a tube. There's no mixing required. You basically squeeze some out onto something flat, mix it up a little bit, and you can use it to fill in creases and seams and stuff. And that's what I'm working on, filling in on the larger model. I'm using that to fill in those seams, and I can actually get in there and sand it smooth. So I'm holding out hope that it's going to come out pretty well. Plus, things like that hair, if you end up with like rough stuff where the support's attached to it, you can smooth that out with the same body putty, which is cool. So
That's cool.
So that's what I'm working on. I also have a similarly sized figure of Sailor Moon, which is an anime, not a comic book. Well, I think there are comic books as well, but my sister's a big Sailor Moon fan. Manga, right. I'm trying to print that and make it really nice. I'm going to give it to her as a Christmas gift. So luckily she doesn't listen to the show.
As far as you know.
As far as I know. I might have just ruined it. So that's another one where that body putty is going to come in handy, because I printed another one for my wife because she's also a fan. And that's the one thing I didn't like. Every seam on that thing you could see, which really bothered me. But I didn't know about the body putty then. So. And
it's like early Linux, man.
Yep.
It's all experimentation.
Yep. And this is I want to say it's like the perfect hobby for me, because there's a technology aspect, there's a problem solving aspect, and there's this like hands-on model building aspect, which models are a thing I loved when I was a kid. I would build model airplanes and stuff. And this is a very similar thing, right? Because it's like you're putting things together and you're trying to make them look just right and you're trying to paint them just right, and I enjoy it, right? So this is a perfect hobby for me.
Word.
But anyway, I put links in the show notes to both the Witchblade model, the Sailor Moon model, both of which I paid for, but they're only a couple bucks each. There's a ball-jointed doll that I'm working on for the kids, which I talked about months ago, but I didn't like that one, and I found a different one, so I restarted that project, but that one's on Thingiverse, so it's free. I also printed cat armor. Which I do not think is going to end up on the cat. The kids think it's going to end up on the cat. I do not think the cat is going to go for it. It may end up being dog armor, but that's also linked to Thingiverse there. And I put a link to the body putty that I used.
I think you need human armor before you try to put the cat.
You're probably right. I used to have... you ever see the... you've seen the movie Hackers. We talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
Kate in Hackers had that finger armor. You remember? It was a piece. Well, I had one of those when I was younger. If I can find that, that'll be the first piece of armor I'll be able to wear to protect myself.
Yeah, sometimes when you do like deep sea fishing, you end up wearing like and you're going after shark or certain type of fish, you actually wear a chainmail glove.
Yeah.
That's what you'd need to put the cat armor on the cat.
That's probably what I need.
A pair of chainmail gloves.
Yeah, I was reading some of the comments from folks who printed the cat armor, and it seems like a 25-75 split of cats that are cool with it and cats that like tried to maul their owner when they tried to put it on them.
And I'm guessing the 75% are the maulers.
You know which side is which, yeah.
Yeah, I've had cats. It's not a hard guess.
Yeah. So, and the only other thing, Mark, I sent you this link earlier today. I found this cool music stream on YouTube, which is...
It is cool.
Which is Star Wars themed lo-fi music that you can just throw on in the background. And it's cool. It's got this little animation of Ahsoka sitting there studying. Because for whatever reason, that's the thing now, right? You have this little animation of a girl studying and you play lo-fi music in the background. I don't know. Well, this one's Ahsoka, and it's cool.
And Ahsoka's awesome.
Yeah, right? And it's a cool little animation. It's just like, I don't know. The whole thing is just, it's perfect for someone who likes Star Wars.
And did you drop that in the show notes?
It is. It's in the notes there.
Music to work by.
Music to work by. But it's good stuff. So, Mark, what have you been up to? I feel like I've been talking this whole show. It's almost like I'm the host. I'm going to take a drink.
Well,
you talk.
I've been known to hog the spotlight, so that's okay. Obviously, we've had some gaming overlap. We've had our Valheim server that I was the only one who showed up this week, which is fine.
I feel terrible about that. I haven't played
it's
Valheim
fine.
in like 2 months. I've been
It's
so
fine.
focused on No Man's Sky.
It's fine. I collected us some wood for Assault on Bone Ass, to help build that base near him. So that was fun. And then I decided, well, since I'm the only one, I'm going to log off and finish Squid Game, which was wow, pretty interesting series on Netflix. Squid Game, if you haven't watched it yet, not kid friendly in the least.
Oh yeah, my kids heard about it and they asked about it, and my wife and I hadn't heard about it, and she checked it out and she's like, no.
Hard pass.
No.
Hard pass. It's like Battle Royale or a more violent Hunger Games. Yeah.
Okay.
Hard pass for the kids.
I haven't watched it.
Have you ever seen the original Japanese Battle Royale movie?
No.
It's pretty brutal.
Okay.
So anyway, but obviously, so the gaming, No Man's Sky, it's been a lot of fun pulling you in. No Man's Sky has these events called expeditions, which are sort of a FOMO, fear of missing out type of a thing. And I did my first expedition I ever bothered, and I'm telling Nate, you got to do this expedition because when you do it, you unlock rewards on your account, so all your saves can get them. And it was pretty cool because it, much like a good CTF course, that expedition accelerated you through a bunch of stuff, and now you know how some systems work that you normally would not have gotten to until later in the game.
Yeah, so I had just started No Man's Sky. I might have had the game a week. I had like 3 or 4 hours in when Mark told me about this. And I just looked today because I was cleaning up some Steam games. I have played in the past 2 weeks 24 hours of No Man's Sky.
Well, it'll tell you on each save how many hours you have on that save.
Yeah.
Just to make you feel guilty.
Yeah.
I am super excited about the DC 610 CTF that I built the dragon thing for. And
it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's 3 flags in here, and I added a page on the router address with a message for people who get to it with a little bit of coaching. Hey, don't attack these IPs. There's this many flags, and of these flags, you'll need some Linux skills for 2 of them.
Right.
So if someone looks at that and says, I'm shitty at Linux, I don't want them to be wasting their time if they don't feel they can get to them.
Let them try. It's up to them, though. Yeah, give them.
So
give them the precursor, and then if they choose to try, then yeah, that's not bad.
So after the Red Hat CTF, I kind of feel like my flags are so basic. I said this on Discord earlier today. My flags are so basic, they're wearing ugly.
Discord! Yeah, no, and that's fine for that CTF because there's no high-stakes stuff, and people, we want flags that are easy to attain. So if that's what you made, then that's fine. Because there's going to be folks that have thrown in really difficult stuff, and we want people to be able to get some wins, right? Otherwise, they're not going to have fun.
But I don't know how easy to attain they really will be, because especially the 3rd flag is going to require a thinking cap.
Yeah, right. So that's the problem when you make flags, right? When I made...
I give clues, but, we'll see what happens.
When I made the Hack Your Derby stuff, or the Hack My Derby stuff, I made these flags, and they seemed pretty easy to me, right? But then I had a friend run through them who, at the time, wasn't actively working red teamer. Like, he was a penetration tester. And he said he enjoyed them, right? So, to me, that was like high praise. This guy who walks in and destroys companies for a living said he enjoyed my CTF. Didn't necessarily mean that it was hard, but he enjoyed it because it made him think and it made him do some stuff. He did walk through it in like an hour, but that's what I was going for. I wanted people, because that iteration was, it was on my head in a hat. and it was Wi-Fi only. So you had to be within, I don't know, 20 yards of me to be able to use the thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted them to be easy to do. So anyway.
But so I'm super excited about that. I know we have a call this Saturday.
Yep.
I've got questions around when you're going to give us the flag payloads. How do we know that those are going to be valid codes?
Right. Yeah, we're going to talk about all that.
That's cool, but I think it's going to be a good old time. And then, because we're all about the 3D printing, hang on a second. I should have grabbed this earlier. So as a thank you gift for helping her out with being a new Red Hatter, Jaimie got me a spool of glow in the dark PLA. And yesterday, to celebrate the Shat going into space, or maybe it was the day before, I printed this retro spaceship. And I have this UV flashlight to charge it. So let's see how this works. Charging it up with UV light.
Is it going to be bright enough that you can see it on camera or not?
I don't know. We're going to find out.
We're going to see in a minute. Oh, you're going to turn off the light. That'll do it.
I've got so many monitors in here, but...
Yeah, you can kind of see it glowing.
Yeah, it's disappointing because I've got too many monitors in here, but you got to trust me on this.
Yeah, turn off the monitors. It'll be fine.
Actually...
There you go.
Can you see it?
Kinda. It's still the other.
Turn off this monitor.
Turn off all the monitors, and all of a sudden Marc drops out because his computer goes to sleep. Yeah, it's kind of glowing.
Okay. All right, I'm coming back in because I feel really awkward not being able to see what's going on.
You're like, I can't see. Where'd the monitor go?
I can't see. How am I supposed to fight? Reach out with your feelings. Come on back, monitors. There we go.
There they are.
There we
you
go.
Got that familiar.
There we go.
The familiar monitor glow.
Yeah. So the 3D printing's kind of fun, and I actually found a pattern to do whistles.
Oh, that's cool.
Because with the scouting and stuff, so I've got 3D printed whistles that actually.
My God,
they work pretty well.
They do work pretty well.
Well, because in Pennsylvania, when you're on the water, you need a whistle.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna print a bunch of 3D whistles to hand out to my venture crew.
That's cool. That's cool.
That are
that
glow in the dark.
Are they ball whistles or are they just a whistle?
No, it's a one piece with a design that is kind of shrieky.
That's cool.
I should probably try and find it on Thingiverse and put it in the show notes.
I didn't know if maybe it printed a ball inside of it, right? It could. Yeah, right. It could do that, but no.
It could, but they're one piece, no ball. Just a cool design.
No ball, just like kids on the playground.
Now I'm being lit by the arcade.
There you go.
Kind of cool. Phoenix,
there you go.
One of my favorites, and then my server glows in the background. But that's yeah. That's my highlights. So
cool.
Good chat.
Just catching up on chat. Speaking of chat, there's actually folks chatting that I've been ignoring. I'm sorry to all of you. I'm a terrible host. I just have too much going on.
He's not really sorry.
Too many displays. Anyway, yeah. So I think we may as well go on into the news. What do you think?
Yeah, hit the button.
Let's go into the news. So honestly, we've only got 2 news articles for tonight, which some of you might be happy for because, the shows go on longer than they should. So this is actually from the end of September, right? But we haven't recorded a show since then, and I felt like it was worth talking about. So 2 big things happened in the world of Facebook toward the end of September. First, there is, or was, a whistleblower came forward, used to work for Facebook, talking about this internal report that, there you go. My God, stop that. It hurts. People are listening to the show like, oh my God, it hurts. Anyway, I hope you're not listening to the show in headphones because you'll have a headache at the end from Mark and his whistle.
I'll stop doing that.
So a shrill noise blower. I'm not going to say whistle again because you might blow the freaking whistle again. But anyway, a whistleblower used to be an employee of Facebook, came forward and said that Facebook had done this internal study about whether their platforms are negatively impacting the mental health of young people, teens specifically. Maybe that's not all the report covered, but this is what the whistleblower came forward claiming, this is a big problem. And they found that, yes, in fact, they have a negative impact on teens. Now, it gets kind of foggy from here, right? So I would love to say that this is all 100% like, oh my God, Facebook, they're evil. They're hurting teens and they don't care about it. But basically what the whistleblower is claiming is that Facebook says, or this internal report says, oh yes, we hurt teens, but we don't care because we want to make money, right? And the quote-unquote hurt teens has to do with the way their algorithm works, specifically on things like Instagram, where it promotes content that is, well, interacted with, right? You have something to say, Mark, I can tell. Go ahead, speak.
I'm going to be a smartass, but I mean this with all my heart. The past 18 months have really shown me that social media, Facebook and all of it, not only hurts kids, but honestly at an equal level often hurts adults and turns smart people into a bunch of morons.
Right. So the distinction here though is how much is it hurting you? Is it hurting to the point where you maybe feel like you want to commit any sort of self-harm? Is it hurting you in a way that has negatively impacted your life in a way that it would not have been negatively impacted without social media? Now, I'm not taking a stance one side or the other. I'm just trying to sort of like go with it here.
I honestly believe that there are people who are dead today that would not have been dead had they not bought into the false information specifically around COVID.
Right.
On social
So
media.
I don't know if that's specifically what this report is about. Now, I don't know.
It's no, it's not. It's mostly I think about the kids because
Right.
it's like Mrs. Flanders. Would somebody think of the children?
Right. So
grasp my pearls.
I think,
and that's valid as a parent. That's important.
I think you're not wrong. There are people that were absolutely swayed one way or the other on the pandemic, on who to vote for, on many things because of social media, right? Because of misinformation spreading in social media. And I do believe that was mentioned in this report, but the specific thing that the article focuses on, well, mainly I heard about this in the news several days in a row. That's what made me look into it and include it in the show today, because I thought it was worth talking about, right?
I remember all the chatter about the whistleblower.
Right.
No, I'm not going to blow the whistle again.
Here comes the whistle.
Yeah. There was a very funny Saturday Night Live skit that featured the whistleblower.
Oh yeah. I don't watch SNL, so I don't know.
I caught it just as a YouTube clip. I don't watch the show normally, but there are some funny clips sometimes on the
There
YouTube.
are, definitely. But yeah, so anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that supposedly, according to the whistleblower, yes, their platform hurts kids, and Facebook does not care. Now, there's some nuance to that. Now, you're right. I don't think they do care. They care about making money. But there is some nuance to that, and this was called out by another news report that I heard, where it's basically, yes, there is a small percentage of kids who already had mental problems that were exacerbated by social media. Now, does that mean it's not a valid argument? No, right? If one kid was negatively impacted by this, I think it's a good enough reason to say maybe they should look into making this better, at least for kids or for people that are, susceptible to this sort of thing, right?
There's certainly an argument that parents should be given the tools to equip their kids, and parents are obligated to teach their kids. And too many of us as parents have let our kids just plop themselves down in front of a screen
Right.
without any sort of supervision or whatever, and the parents who like put protections in place or who restrict screen time, well, they're the weird ones. I mean, I was the dad who did not buy my kids smartphones when they were younger. I mean, I probably let my son Josh sit in front of a computer for too much, but I my kids didn't have smartphones really until they were, God, were they in college? I don't. Josh had a smartphone in high school just because by then I just caved. But like you hear about like sixth graders with smartphones, whatever. I'm like, dudes, I didn't have a smartphone until I was in my 40s.
Yeah. It was a different time though, right? So our older daughter has one, but it's very heavily monitored, right? Like I'm the guy that puts all kinds of controls in place. So they can't
Yeah.
use certain apps. They can only use it so many hours a day. I can track the phone when I need to. And our younger daughter doesn't have one. She may have one when she's closer to like the 10-year-old range, which is when we got the one for our older daughter. I feel like the age at which it's quote unquote okay to give your kid a smartphone is getting lower and lower every year, right? But I do think there's a lot of responsibility on the caregiver to make sure that that kid is not using services that are negatively impacting their life.
I think the expected age that a kid gets a smartphone is getting lower than lower, lower and lower.
Right.
I don't know if I'd say it's okay,
Right. Right. That's probably a better way to put that.
but that's my opinion. I read something, and I've brought this up in this show before. Um, one of our fellow Red Hatters wrote a memo list a while back that social media is probably one of the greatest ills that we've ever inflicted upon ourselves. And when I first read that, I'm like, that seems kind of extreme. But honestly, the more I think about that over the past couple of years, the more I've started to kind of agree with it.
Yeah.
And I consume social media every day. I consume Facebook, I consume Reddit, I consume YouTube, I consume a certain amount of Twitter. But when Facebook was down, when they yeeted themselves off the internet, like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
that was actually glorious.
It kind of was.
I kind of had wished it had stayed down longer.
Yeah, and that was the other thing I wanted to talk about because it was literally like the day that this whistleblower was going in front of the Senate, which seemed
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
weird and coincidental.
Not
I'm
a
not gonna go the conspiracy theory route, although a number of people that I know on social media immediately went there. I mean, Facebook wasn't even back yet, and they're like, oh my God, they turned it off because Zuckerberg is deleting data. I'm like, Zuckerberg doesn't need an outage to delete data. He just goes and deletes data. Like, when has Zuckerberg ever shown that he gives a damn about what is right and what the users think?
I really don't think he does give a damn.
No. That was, I firmly believe that their outage, which, by the way, Facebook's outage was basically, they made a BGP oops, and automation propagated the BGP oops.
Exactly.
And the problem is, like, people do this, which is why I think it's believable. This has happened. Like, didn't China go offline once because of a BGP oops, like all of China?
It sounds like it could have.
I forget which, there was a whole country that was offline. Or was it China caused it? I forget what it was. But there was a whole country offline for a period of time because of a BGP mistake. BGP is a very important thing. It makes all the routing on the internet work properly. And, that's obviously an oversimplification. If Jason were here, he would slap me down and give me a correction. But anyway, my point is it's very important because that's how IPs are found on the internet, right? There's a route published that says my IP space is over here. This is how you find me, right? Well, Facebook screwed up their own BGP routes. And by doing that, not only did they take down Facebook, which is the thing that we all saw, they took down things like their internal telephone system, their internal door security system, their internal messaging system, everything. All of the IT infrastructure that Facebook depends on for inside communication and security all went down. So you could imagine there was just chaos. And that's why they were down for hours, because if it was just an oops in BGP, you correct the oops, it propagates, things are back. That might still be some time, but it's not 6-8 hours or whatever that they were down for. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I think that, yes, it was a weird coincidence. Do I know for certain whether it was or was not some weird conspiracy thing? I feel like it wasn't, because working in IT, I know this is a very easy mistake to make.
I made a comment on a thread about it, where some of the people were like getting all, ooh, it's a.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I've spent enough time in IT, and if people really understood how fragile
Yes.
some of the big companies' IT systems are,
Yes.
they'd be terrified. And there's this one guy who's like, how can my porn site that I run, how can a porn site be more resilient than Facebook? I'm like, well, you've obviously never done any work with elevated privileges, have you?
Right, exactly.
And I had a whole bunch of people jumping in on my side, and they're like, yeah, the struggle is real.
Yeah, and I know we're preaching to the choir here, because the folks who listen to the show presumably have some exposure to IT. Otherwise, why are you here? If you're not in IT, please let us know. I'd love to hear why you're here. Thank you for listening, but I'd love to hear why. It's because of Mark singing. Anyway, I'm sure you all know how fragile, like exactly what Mark is talking about. And I've said the same thing to a number of folks today. Like, you have no idea how fragile this thing that we've all come to depend on is. It's really dependent on a bunch of key systems and a bunch of smart people that make sure that they all work properly. And when those smart people are too tired or just make a typo, things explode.
And there's big companies that everyone relies on for many different things that are, things could go surprisingly wrong pretty quickly.
Yes.
And that's all I'm going to say, because I don't want to embarrass anybody.
Right. So anyway,
I love the second article, by the way.
That's what I have to say about Facebook for tonight. The second article was linked by Jason before he left. He gave me a quick rundown.
Nate, this is a CTF challenge, because I actually was reading it while you were ranting a little bit.
Good.
And so basically, essentially what happened to some staff members, some employees, their social security numbers were, air quote, hacked, but they were embedded in the source code of the school's web page, and they were encoded. Now, encoded, for those of you who don't know what that means, if you ever got the decoder ring in a box of cereal, or did one of those little puzzles where A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, that's kind of what was going on. They were the data was encoded on the web page, and it was a simple bit shift or some other common way to decode it.
It was encoded in ROT 13.
Possibly. Now, it doesn't, and in fact, depending on the source code, you would have been able to look at the web source and see exactly what the encoding algorithm was. One of the CTFs we were working on at Red Hat, actually, we were so close to that one. We were just forgetting how concatenate works.
Yeah.
In JavaScript, we were adding, not catting. Yeah, and so there's a lawsuit against the journalist who figured this out, but that's kind of like suing the guy for looking into your window and seeing your wife's boobs when
you didn't put a curtain up.
You didn't put a curtain up, and your wife is running around without a bath towel on.
Right.
Right? From a hacker perspective, it was that easy to get the data. So that's funny to me.
There was a case years ago. It might be 10 years ago. This hacker went by the name of Weave, W-E-E-V. And I think it was Verizon or AT&T, I forget who it was, but he basically found this way that through their websites like search, and I might be getting the details wrong, he was able to disclose data by putting in a certain search string on their public facing website, and he got run through the friggin' ringer for it, right? I think he might have even served some time in jail. He's been exonerated, I think, at this point. And again, if I'm getting the data wrong, I'm sorry, folks. I didn't look it up as research because again, Jason gave this to us like he dropped it into the notes and said bye. Anyway, but there's precedent that says this is not illegal, right? That the thing that this person is being accused of is in fact not illegal, right? So hopefully this journalist does not actually have any trouble from the law, and this will blow over. But essentially, what Missouri is saying that viewing the source of a web page and doing this very basic reverse engineering of the quote unquote encoding of these social security numbers. I have a short person behind me. What do you need?
Mom said we're allowed to go on our electronics for a little.
All right, I plugged it in for you. Sorry, folks. There you go.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry for bothering you.
It's okay. I'll see you after we're done, okay?
The internet forgives you.
The internet forgives her. So anyway, speaking of phones and kids, right? Close the door. Come on. All right. So so there is precedent that says that they are actually not in trouble. But basically, Missouri is like trying to throw the book at this journalist who found this and quote unquote reversed their multi-stage attack here.
They should be throwing the book at whichever clown designed this web page,
yes,
this is embarrassing.
Yeah. Now, I mean, like I kind of feel for the
luggage combo.
I kind of feel for the web developer, right? Especially for a school district, because it's probably like designed by a student or like by the school's IT person or whatever, right? I don't know this for sure, but I can tell you that I've seen that plenty of times at schools, and it probably means they shouldn't be working with that kind of sensitive data, but they don't know any better, right? Like they don't know what they don't know. They don't know that it's so easy to view that source and pull that out and, oh, but I encoded it, quote unquote. Yeah, well, you encoded it, stupid. But they don't know.
I'm sorry. That's kind of like having the Amish build me my.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's an excuse.
Like
I'm not saying that it's a good reason for them to be able to for them to do this. I'm not saying that they're not at fault. I'm just saying I can understand how it probably happened. Right?
Oh yeah, it happened because people who don't understand security,
right,
put data in a form that was not at all secure.
Right.
And they're mad, they're embarrassed, and they're deflecting blame.
Yeah, they're trying to blame the journalist who was, you could argue, just doing their freaking job.
Yeah.
They're a journalist. They're a reporter, right? They're reporting a problem by doing this. So. But
this is the type of puzzle you'd see in a CTF where something's like encoded,
yeah,
and then you decode it to get the flag. That just gives me a chuckle because it goes kind of along with, and had the web designers or whoever participated in CTFs, they would know that. They would have designed a more secure setup.
Looks like Sabretooth in chat just threw
I see
info about the thing I was trying to recall. Has to do with China Telecom, and
he's a bit of a tiger, that one.
ZDNet article. I'll try to grab that and throw it into the show notes then. For 2 hours, a large chunk of European mobile traffic was routed through China. Oh, that's right. It was through China. Right. I remember there was a bunch of accusations that China was trying to steal the data. Now I remember. Anyway. All right. So that's all the news we had for tonight. Did you have any more news to talk about, Mark?
No, and we're at 9:27.
We're
at an hour and 8 minutes for the second half.
Yep.
I think this is probably a good time to call it.
It's probably good. We spent like an hour on the first half and an hour on the second half. We might actually have a normally length show tonight.
I think we do.
It's scary that 2 hours has become the normal length of this show.
People say they want it.
People say it's not a problem, so right. All right, so anyway, folks, thanks for listening / watching. If you want to watch this show live, you can do so on the second and fourth Thursday of every month. Yeah, I have another visitor. I'm just trying to finish the show. Can I finish the show? You wanted your tablet. All right, go. Go. Get out. Go. Close the door. My gosh. This is the downside to keeping the kids' electronics in my office. Anyway, where was I? Right, if you want to watch this circus live, you can do so on the second and fourth Thursday
Circus.
of every. It's a circus tonight. It's not a train wreck this time. It's a circus. On the second and fourth Thursday of every month, unless we decide to play Diablo 2. You can do so on YouTube. Look for the Iron Sysadmin Podcast, or Twitch. Again, the Iron Sysadmin Podcast. You can join our Discord community if you would like to.
Discord.
Yeah. There's a link for that in the show notes, or you can find it on ironsysadmin.com. I'm not going to read it to you because it's long, and there's a bunch of there's a capital Q in it, some numbers. And of course, you can find us on the social medias, including Facebook. Look for the Iron Sysadmin Podcast.
Ew, David.
Ew, David. Right. We even stream to Facebook, although I don't know that anybody ever watches there. Maybe I'll just stop doing that. Anyway, thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the audio podcast wherever you find podcasts. And if you want to help support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/IronSysadmin. And with that, I think we're going to call it a show for tonight. You got any final words, Mark?
It's still a show even if you don't call it one.
You're probably right. You're probably right. In fact, you are right. It's totally a show.
Thanks all of our loyal.
It is perfect that your internet connection dropped right at that moment. I think you said thanks to all of our loyal listeners. Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, folks. We'll catch you next time. Have a good one.